This Birkin bag costs $300,000, but surprisingly, it's not holding makeup. It's hiding $500,000 in dirty money. And guess what? It's all perfectly legal. Welcome to the world of luxury laundering, where criminals don't stash cash under beds, rather they clean it through designer bags and million-dollar watches. This isn't your average crime story. It's how the rich hide their money in plain sight, so let's dive in. Number 1. $450,000 handbag money laundry service. Let's talk about one of the classiest and sneakiest ways to clean dirty money. It's a $450,000 Hermès Birkin bag. Someone buys a Birkin bag for around $50,000. Then, using a fake company they own, they sell that same bag to themselves for, let's say, $200,000. On paper, that looks like a $150,000 profit, legitimate investment income. All of a sudden, drug money or other illegal cash now looks like a smart business move in the luxury fashion world, and they can do this over and over again. So why does this actually work? First, there's almost no way to track these bags. While Hermes may assign serial numbers, once the bag is resold, tracking who owns it becomes nearly impossible. Second, the price of a Birkin is totally flexible. One might go for $10,000, another for over $400,000. The price often depends on rarity, past owners, or simply how badly someone wants to launder money. And the rules around these luxury sales are surprisingly weak. Auction houses are only required to report cash transactions over $10,000. So, if you use a wired transfer, you can move massive amounts of money without raising any red flags. There are real-life cases to buttress our point. Let's start with the 1MDB scandal in Malaysia, where $260 million was allegedly laundered through art, jewelry, and lots of Birkin bags. Russian oligarchs have also been caught using expensive items to hide wealth from sanctions. What's wild is how easy it is. Banks are heavily watched, but luxury goods, not so much. The next time you spot someone carrying a Birkin, ask yourself, is that just a fancy purse or a money laundering machine? And if you think that's wild, wait until you hear how they're using modern art like a money printing machine. Number 2. Banana duct tape tax dodge. This is one of the most ridiculous but oddly genius money laundering tricks ever pulled off. Remember that banana duct tape to a wall that sold for $120,000? It's called art laundering, and people use strange high-price artwork to clean dirty money. Imagine someone buys a piece of so-called conceptual art, like that banana, for $10,000 through a shell company they secretly own. Then they sell it to another company they also control, but this time for $120,000. That's a $110,000 profit on paper. What makes this scheme so effective is how unregulated the art world is. There's no clear market price for art because value is completely subjective. One person's garbage can be another's genius. That means it's easy to fake prices and inflate values without anyone asking too many questions. And in many places, auction houses don't even have to verify who's buying or selling, as long as the money isn't handed over in big chunks of cash. Actually, the Panama Papers revealed how the rich and powerful used art to move money offshore and avoid taxes. US Senate reports and FBI investigations estimate that art laundering moves about $6 billion every year. That banana? It may not have been part of any actual crime, but it shows just how easy it would be to launder money with a little duct tape and imagination. You don't even have to hide the evidence, just hang your money on the wall and call it art. Now, speaking of overpriced nonsense, let's talk about how private islands have become the ultimate tool for hiding massive fortunes. Loving how wild this is? Well, smash that like button and subscribe. This rabbit hole only gets deeper. Number 3. Phantom Island Shell Game. Now, can we talk about private islands that are not for the drone shots or luxury Instagram posts, but for something far sneakier? Turns out, buying a private island is one of the slickest ways to hide millions without leaving much of a paper trail. It's called the Phantom Island Shell Game, and it's how shady investors quietly turn dirty money into clean profits. To pull this trick off, someone needs to set up a shell company in a place like the British Virgin Islands where ownership records are kept secret. That company buys a private island for $10 million. Then, a few months later, another shell company, also secretly owned by the same person, buys the same island, but this time for $15 million. On paper, it looks like a $5 million profit. In reality, it's the same person moving money between fake names. Why does this work so well? First, there's almost no oversight. Unlike houses or yachts, most governments don't really track private island deals, especially when offshore companies are involved. even the US Treasury has admitted they have little visibility into these types of sales. Also, island values are completely made up. There's no set market price. The value is just what someone is willing to pay, and if that someone is you, under a different name, it's easy to fake profit. Interestingly, many tax havens don't charge capital gains taxes. So that $5 million profit, it might never be taxed at all. This isn't just theory. In 2021, the Pandora Papers exposed how billionaires, politicians, and criminals were using offshore companies to hide wealth, often through island purchases. In 2022, the FBI busted a man who used a Caribbean island to launder $30 million from a Ponzi scheme using shell companies and inflated land deals. So no, buying an island isn't just for Bond villains anymore. It's a risk-free way to clean dirty money, and until global laws catch up, this loophole will keep working. However, islands are so 2010. The real pros are using something way smaller and shinier. Number 4. Rolex Racket. You might think luxury watches are all about prestige and style, but in the world of dirty money, they serve a much another purpose. They're the perfect disguise for moving millions. Let's say a drug cartel makes $1 million in cash. Instead of risking a suspicious bank deposit, they use that cash to buy 10 Rolex Daytonas, each worth $100,000. Next, the watches are shipped overseas, often to Dubai, where the luxury watch market is booming and regulations are famously light. These watches will be received by a second business, which just so happens to also be controlled by the cartel. Then that second business sells the watches back to them for $110,000 each. On paper, it looks like a legit $1.1 million from international watch sales. In reality, they've just cleaned their original cash and even made a little profit on top. Why is this method so hard to catch? For starters, watches aren't tracked like houses or vehicles. Ownership changes hands easily, and international customs rarely flag them. Their value is also flexible. It's not unusual for a rare timepiece to shoot up in price, so a 10% markup doesn't seem suspicious. And most watch dealers don't follow strict rules like banks do. Many skip verifying buyer identities even during huge sales. Thankfully, law enforcement is catching on. The DEA has seized millions in watches tied to drug rings. And in Europe, officials recently froze hundreds of millions in high-end timepieces linked to sanctioned individuals. Still, in many places, this strategy slides by unnoticed, because a man wearing a Rolex doesn't trigger alarms, but his bank deposits might. Now, if you think watches are subtle, just wait until you hear how criminals are taking things to the skies with private jets. Number 5. Ghost jet accounting trick. Let me tell you about the ultimate trick some rich people use to make dirty money disappear with private jets. This isn't a theory or a rumor. It's happening right now, flying just above us. So, a shady billionaire buys a $50 million private jet using an anonymous offshore company. Then they create another shell company that leases that same jet for $500,000 a month. Now, instead of being suspicious cash, that $500,000 each month looks like clean business income. On paper, it's just one company paying another for aircraft use. In reality, it's a slick way to turn illegal money into something that looks totally legit. This trick works so well because the world of private aviation is almost completely off the radar. In the US, the FAA says about 70% of private jets are registered to LLCs, which means the real owners are often hidden behind legal paperwork. Secondly, those lease payments look normal. Companies spend tens of thousands a day to charter private jets, so $500,000 a month doesn't really raise red flags. It's just part of the cost of doing business, right? Even law enforcement struggles with this one. The Pandora Papers exposed how wealthy elites and sanctioned individuals were using jets like money laundering machines. And when the DOJ seized a $90 million jet in 2022, they'd finally caught onto a scheme that had been flying under the radar literally. The craziest part is that banks have to report large transactions, but there's no global system tracking private jet leases. As one investigator put it, you'd have better luck finding a ghost than following one of these jet deals. Now, if you thought art jets and Birkins were wild, just wait. In part 2, we're exposing how billionaires use charities to buy yachts tax-free, turn wine into million-dollar assets, and launder cash through a front you'd never expect. This was just the appetizer. Hit that like button, subscribe, and tap next for the main course.